This episode of the Practice of Therapy podcast is brought to you by TherapyNotes. You can find out more about them by going to practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes. Hello, I'm Gordon Brewer, and welcome to the Practice of Therapy podcast, where we explore the business and clinical sides of running a private practice. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. This is episode number 244 of the podcast. And if this is your first time joining us, welcome. Glad you're here, and looking forward to you being with us in future episodes. Looking forward to you here again, hearing from our guest today, Lily Dawson. And Lily was one of those great people that reached out to me online, and really looking forward to you hearing her story. Lily comes to the private practice world really from more of a business background and having run a business before. And I think she has a lot of wisdom to share with us about going into private practice and where we need to focus our efforts. Particularly, I think we get kind of ingrained in graduate school to really constantly hone our clinical skills, which I think we should, and I'm not saying we shouldn't, but when it comes to growing a business or growing a practice, you've got to look at some other skill sets that you really need to hone. And those are really skill sets around marketing and networking and learning how to attract potential clients. So Lily is going to talk some more about that, and looking forward to you hearing from her about this particular topic. But before we get to Lily, I'd love for you to check out our free trainings that are going on, and those can be found at practiceoftherapy.com/webinars. And if you go to that link, you'll be able to see, right now we've got 4 different webinars that are automated webinars that you can pick the time that you watch the webinar on topics from what to do at the very beginning stages of private practice, all the way up to expanding and going from solo to group practice. Also, webinar there on Google Workspace, and also one that's been really fairly popular is the one on accepting third-party payments, or AKA insurance, in your practice, and some of the pros and cons of doing that and how you might get started in accepting insurance in your practice. So commend those to you at practiceoftherapy.com/webinars. And also, before we get to my conversation with Lily, love for you to hear more from our sponsor, TherapyNotes. And you can find out more too by going to practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes.
As your practice grows, the systems and processes you have in place will keep your practice running smoothly. That is why it is important to have an electronic health record system that is specific to mental health providers. TherapyNotes is a complete practice management system with everything you need to manage patient records, schedule appointments, meet with patients remotely, create rich documentation, and bill insurance right at your fingertips. Their streamlined software is accessible wherever and whenever you need it. They are who Gordon uses in his practice. And did I mention that they are one of the top-rated EHRs for mental health private practices? Their support is also second to none. Be sure to check them out at practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes. Be sure to use the promo code GORDON to get 2 months free.
Hello, everyone, and welcome again to the podcast. And I'm happy for you to get to know today Lily Dawson. Welcome, Lily.
Thanks. Hi.
Yes. Lily, as I start with everyone, why don't you tell folks a little bit about who you are and where you are and how you've landed where you've landed?
Yes. So I am an MFT, a marriage and family therapist in Missouri. I'm in Kansas City. Let's see. I was I owned my own business for 15 years. I was an artist before I went to grad school. And so what I found is that when I left grad school and became a private practitioner, I very quickly was able to build my business because I had so much experience building a business before that was pretty successful. So it was a very quick transition from graduating school to having a full caseload and a waiting list and all sorts of stuff. And so I really found that what I enjoyed was not just giving therapy, but building my business, and all the things that go along with businesses. And then I started a side business where I consult other therapists about how to build their businesses. So this is really a passion of mine. And so not only do I love giving therapy, but I have also found that I really, really love being an entrepreneur and helping other people who may not have that same gift or skill that I find that I really enjoy.
Right. Well, I know one of the things that we were talking about before we started recording was just kind of a passion that you've kind of developed for really helping other therapists that are just getting started in private practice. And, I think the thing that kind of stuck out for me and what we talked about, and then also and just what you had written to me was, I think when people first get started in practice, they're focusing more on getting more training or more experience and that sort of thing. But you have a little bit of a different view about that. So you want to say more about that?
Yes. Yeah. It's funny. There are so many specific interests, of course, that people can take their education, right? Like, oh, I want to go get EMDR trained or somatic experiencing or neurofeedback or whatever. And lovely, go do it. But what I keep running into are brand new practitioners who say, I just, took out a bunch of student loans or paid for all this education. I think that I probably need to go get some more training so that I have more to offer, so that more people are attracted to me. And that's when I say, wrong reason to do extra trainings, right? If you find that a year, months into your practice, you really, really want to get EMDR trained, go get EMDR trained. But I think that the thing that I really like to work on with my clients is not only building confidence, but reducing modesty. And there is so much just of that imposter syndrome. Oh, I'm just not good enough, that we're going to keep perpetuating if we say, yeah, you do need more letters behind your name, or you do need more certifications. Like, no, I mean, so much of what I know as a therapist has even come from things I didn't even learn in school, right? I went through a divorce at a young age. I lost my mom at a young age. Like, there are just so many experiences in here that I have to offer that I am really discrediting when I tell myself, I need more training. I need more experience. What I have isn't good enough. So what I would argue is it's not the training that you need to invest in right after you graduate, but marketing, getting your name out there, helping people find exactly what you do have to offer. Those skills, like I just mentioned, experiencing loss, helping people through grief, uncoupling and what that looks like, these sorts of things that I do have as strengths and I need to legitimize, as opposed to going to find a training to start to legitimize my knowledge.
Right. And I couldn't agree more, because I think one of the things, not to get too much on a soapbox, is that our academic system, particularly around the training of counselors and therapists, has kind of baked into it this meta message of, you're an imposter until you have so many years after your, so many years of experience, or you've got so many letters after your name, or you've written so many things, or all of that sort of thing. And you're exactly right. Most clients could really care less about all of that stuff. They just want to know that you can connect with them, and that you are at least have a little bit of qualifications to help them. But all of the other stuff doesn't really matter as much to them.
I think that's so good.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of sad sometimes the, lack of confidence I see, but also almost that desperation that I see for people who really think I need to go get something else, right? And it's like, oh my gosh, you have no idea how much good stuff you've got in there already, right?
Right, right. And you're
Mm.
right too. Again, not to get off on a tangent or anything, but I think one of the things that I've learned in my clinical work, and again, I don't say this as a bragging thing, but I have been doing this, over 20 years now. And one of the things that I know is really effective and gives more credibility with clients is to know that you've experienced hard stuff in your life as well
Mm.
and handled it. And
Yeah.
where you really connect with clients. And so,
Mm.
yeah. So what I wonder, as you have thought about this and worked with other therapists, how do you market all of this? How do you get that out there so
Mm.
people can connect?
Great question. If the task now becomes, okay, so market yourself, don't do trainings. Luckily, in this day and age, we have so many free resources we can utilize, right? It
Hmm.
costs nothing to have a Facebook page where you put up all sorts of stuff that someone could really go to and learn more about you and understand if you're the right fit for them and that sort of thing. Same with Instagram, YouTube, podcast, TikTok. I mean, there are lots and lots of different places you can go for this. Um, the number one step for me, though, before you utilize any of these resources, I should throw to your website on there too, because that needs to be a really nice form of marketing too.
Hmm.
But before you use any of these resources, you really do need to nail down your specific point of difference, which again can be really difficult when you're just graduated, maybe experiencing some fear, some imposter syndrome, some is there really anything all that special about me feeling?
Hmm.
But there is, right? Like there is something that you have to offer that someone out there who is hurting really needs to be able to find. And the
Hmm.
only way we can do that is if we can actually distill what is so different and special and great about you down into a brand, basically. How
Hmm.
I do it is I have people really, first we get really, really quiet. I ask them to ask their whole family to leave the house and they sit there and get really quiet because we have enough things that get in the way when we ask the question, what makes me special in our own minds. But if you have, a partner, a dog, or a kid in the other room that needs
Hmm.
attention, you're not going to get anything done. So first get yourself really quiet and then say, why do clients keep coming back to me? What is the thing that makes a client want to walk in this door as opposed to the therapist down the street from me or around the
Hmm.
corner, right? There is something, there really is. And unfortunately, I can't ask your clients what that is. So you need to be able to have the awareness to say, I know there's something here. What is it? Right? That's the first
Hmm.
step. You distill that down. I ask people to distill it down into 5 adjectives. So, 5 adjectives that they can encompass who they sort of are as a therapist, what is going to drive their brand experience. It's going to be things like I'm bubbly and experienced, right? Oh, what an
Hmm.
interesting combination, right? So, finding different things about yourself and getting really specific. I met with this woman recently who she's bubbly, she's cheerful, and she's like, but Lily, that's not quite the right word. And she sat on it for a couple weeks and wrote me back and she said, it's effervescent. I'm effervescent. And I was like, oh, that is so
Hmm.
very different than just bubbly or something. That is specific. That's good. So
Yeah.
being able to really sit with and take seriously these words, because these 5 words need to then drive the experience that all of these other sources that we talked about, social media, website, that sort of thing, should be designed based on these 5 words.
Hmm.
So, fonts, colors, layouts, even how you speak, the types of content that you share, these all should only be determined after you have distilled down who you are and what those words are. I mean, there are fonts out there that are more effervescent than fonts out there that are like professional. And, I mean, I've met with other people who are not effervescent, and they are, I had one gal even say, I'm kind of cold. And I was like, great, we can find like professional, not very personal websites designs for you and stuff like that. And that was so helpful for her to just be like, this is who I am. And it's really helpful to certain people, right?
Yes.
So you just want to make sure you're thinking really intentionally about these decisions, so that even before someone books with you, they can have a really, really good idea, no doubt in their mind, that I'm going to have a really good experience with this person. Everything they're putting out there aligns with the things I'm looking for. The other side of this coin, Gordon, is I want people to be able to look, for instance, at my branding and be able to say, oh, she is definitely not going to be the therapist for me, right? Like, that's not a good fit. And I'm so glad to know that, so that I don't waste $150 and a whole session sitting with someone who's like, oh, wow, you advertised yourself as this, but now that I'm sitting with you, I can see that I need something different. That's not who you are. Right. So I'm trying to get long lasting, sustainable client relationships with my therapist, not just the one-offs that people are never going to come back again. Right. So it's really about distilling down who you are and then making sure that that is driving every single thing you put out there.
Yes. I love that because, I think, one of the things that you're kind of getting at here is the importance of niching down in your practice. So really, really defining for yourself who are the clients that when you work with them energize you, and who are the clients that are the ones that you look forward to going to work for every single day. Because I think a lot of times people make the mistake of casting too broad of a net in trying to market their practices. And if you're doing it too broadly, then you don't really resonate with anybody. And so, And I think we've all had clients at some point in our careers that we just did not enjoy. It's kind of like you look at the schedule and you think, oh no, not them today. That kind of thing. And so I think by like you said, starting with who are you, and I would add to that, what is your why behind what you do?
Oh, great. Absolutely. Yeah. That niching down, casting a tight net rather than a broad one. I was working actually with two play therapists who shared an office together. So ostensibly very similar practices. And I was doing websites with each of them, the branding process for each of them. And one gal said, I work with all kids, all ages, send them to me. I don't care. And the other woman said, I really have found that I loved adolescents. Like, give me your 10 to 14-year-olds. I just really love working with them. So on one gal's website, it says, so-and-so play therapy, all the kids. And on the other website, it says, I work with, I think she even got more specific, like 12 and 13-year-olds. And the woman who works with 12 and 13-year-olds had a waiting list within a month. The other gal is still not full.
Right.
And I mean, if you think about it, if you have a 12-year-old who's suffering, you're going to send that 12-year-old to someone who specializes in 12-year-olds if that's out there. Right.
Yeah.
Not the one who's like, I'll just take anybody. So in fact, naming even your own insecurities or dislikes about certain clients, right? If I really hated working with men, for instance, I better have a website that says therapy for women,
Yes.
like
Yes. Uh-huh.
let's just help ourselves out here. It doesn't behoove me until I feel ready to maybe cross that bridge or do some work around it to invite some men into my sessions. I really need to say, this is where I shine. This is who I help the most. Let me use all the resources possible to reach those people.
Right. Right. Yeah. And that's a theme that people will hear over and over again on this podcast, is that the importance of really identifying who your ideal client is and who you prefer to work with. Because if you don't really know that, you're number one, you're not going to be happy in your career. And number and number two, it just, again, if you don't, as I like to say, if you're going on a trip somewhere, if you don't know where you're going, how are you going to get there? And so you've got to really be able to know, who are your ideal clients and who do you resonate with?
Yes. And what makes you the happiest, right? Like if that girl hated working with men, I don't want to send her a bunch of men. Jeez Louise,
Yeah,
here,
right.
you do great with women. Let's find these things that match. Like, let's not burn people out. Let's admit people's strengths and where they shine. There's somebody else out there that's going to be great for that male client, Let's let that person find each other.
Right. Right. So what are some of the other thoughts that you've got around this topic, Lily?
So when we get to maybe we've done the branding process, we know our 5 adjectives, we know, the fonts, the colors that we're sort of wanting to stay in the realm of. There are very specific ways to do your website that is going to be very important for getting clients. The number one is you need to have a really professional looking website. So there's a lot of free websites out there, and honestly, what you pay for is what you get with those. I recommend Squarespace. I think that they have really professional websites that are wildly easy to use. So get a professional website. I would also encourage to get some really nice pictures taken. This is another way that you can extend the branding process. Don't decorate your office until you have decided your 5 adjectives, right? There is decor that's effervescent, and then there's decor that's professional. Yes. Don't make the mistake of buying a bunch of stuff for your office that you did before you did the branding stuff, and you're like, oh my God, this isn't even me. So professional is really good, right? We want people to know that we can be trusted, that we know what we're doing. And so this all goes along with it. Your website should not be about you. This is the biggest mistake I see.
Yes.
People write, I'm Lily, I'm fantastic because of this. This is what I'm going to do with you when you get into my office, and here's my credentials, blah, 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 blah. Your website needs to get the reader's attention, which means that you have to talk about what the reader cares about, which are their problems. If they're sick and can't sleep at night and endlessly scrolling through Psychology Today at 3:00 in the morning, they want to see somebody that says, hey, are you scrolling at 3:00 in the morning because you can't sleep and your boyfriend just broke up with you and da 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 da, and they're like, this is me, right?
Yes.
So speaking to your clients' problems is the biggest thing. There's one little part on your website, and in my consulting, I go through exactly what needs to go and exact spots on your website, but there's only one portion that's going to talk about you. And the only reason that it's going to talk about you is it needs to speak about how you are going to guide this person, how you are the best guide for them. So it's not really even about me. It's still about just how I'm going to help this person get to the ending goal for them. Right. So talking about them is great. With all the free resources, like I mentioned earlier, in terms of social media and YouTube and podcasts and all the things, take advantage of all of them, because you also are going to get people who may really, really like what they see on your website or Instagram or something, but are just not ready to pull the trigger on it yet.
Yeah.
And so we need to have a way for people to date you who aren't ready to marry you yet, right?
Yes.
So having things like Instagram page, Facebook pages, podcasts, TikTok, stuff for people to just follow, so that maybe even a year from now, they keep seeing information from you. You keep sharing things that are relevant, helpful, personal. So they're developing a nice personal relationship with you, enough that they can say, maybe even a year from now, when they go through something bad, or when they're like, maybe have a job that affords them the ability to get therapy, they say, I know exactly who I want to see. She's been in the back of my mind this whole time. Now is the time, right?
Yeah. Yeah. There's kind of along this line. Again, I don't want to get too far on a tangent, but I'm reminded of a story of a friend of mine who I had really identified with this friend, with my my professional clinical hat or whatever, that this particular client, not client, but friend of mine had maybe been struggling with ADHD. And so I had suggested that to them, and they said, nah, I don't think it is, that kind of thing. But they had come across a social media post that described what it was like in the life of an ADHD person. And they came back to me and they said, Gordon, you were right. This is me. And so that really stuck in my head when I was just thinking about all that you just mentioned about, resonating with people on your website, of being able to describe what it's like in their world. And then and I totally agree. Just, you're there as the guide, not as Donald Miller puts it, you're the guide of the story, not the hero of the story.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
It's that story brand method that I really guide people through.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's cool. So
the other thing with social media, because I think that it can be really difficult and a little scary for people to think about, like, putting themselves out there and coming up with content all the time. But what I know is that if you can take seriously, like, how important it is to help people and to keep people interested in you and following you, then it's also worth, if you have any hangups about social media or putting yourself out there, it's worth getting help around. I have met so many people who want to build their practices, who also have really great boundaries around social media, because it can be really troubling for people. And that's when I say it's time that we get some therapy around this, because we need to use this as a tool. Like, the boundaries that some people have around social media negate their ability to use it as a tool responsibly for their business. And so if this is you, then take it seriously. Go ahead. I know it sounds silly to be like, what? I need to talk to somebody about my fear about seeing my ex on Instagram or something. And it's like, yeah, you do, because it's prohibiting you from being able to use this resource that could be so helpful. Because I really want you to use it regularly and put some ideas out there. There's a lot of help I give with people to become social media machines, which means we create 2 months of posts in a couple hours, and then we schedule it all out so that we don't have to do much maintenance of it. And it's really nice. But in order to do that, you actually have to be able to engage with these things. And so getting over whatever learning curves you need to, or emotional blockages that get in the way, is really important. Or maybe you're just like, hate new technology, and it's like, well, then figure out either how to do it or hire somebody to do it for you.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. I had a conversation with somebody earlier this week about maybe the dilemma that people feel in our field of putting stuff on social media, but that's exactly where we need to be in terms of being able to help people find you. Marketing is just simply helping the people that need your help find you. That's
Absolutely. Well, like your friend with the ADD diagnosis, I mean, how helpful that someone put something out there that resonated with him. And he said,
yes.
as many times as people have told me it didn't click, but this time it clicked because somebody decided to be vulnerable on social media. And he said, this is me. How helpful.
Right, right. So, well, Lily, I want to be respectful of your time. What sort of parting thoughts do you have for folks?
What I know is that it's really scary to think about investing in anything after you've spent a lot of money on school. What I want to remind everyone is that there will be a time when you're making a lot of money, when you have a waiting list, when you have too many people to even manage and you're cutting back on your hours and you're raising your prices. Anything you can do to invest in helping yourself out now to begin everything really well will set the best foundation for a thriving practice later on. And probably not that much later on, like in a month, maybe after you start some of this stuff.
Right.
So I would really, really try to encourage some comfort and calming of those fears and just some deep trusting of that inner knowing and all the knowledge that you have, and then go ahead and investing in the thing that's going to be able to put it out there.
Right, right. That's very well said. Very well said. So, Lily, tell folks how they can get in touch with you and how they can find you.
Yeah. So my business is called Therapy Corps, CORPS, kind of like the Peace Corps, but for therapists. And I'm, my website is therapycorps.org. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, giving out lots of free advice. If you want to schedule a one-on-one session, I would love to help you with whatever phase of the process you're in. If you just want to date me and find me on Instagram, do it. I will give you lots of free information that you can take and run with and find really, really helpful. Lots of blogs and stuff out there too. So yeah.
Well, Lily, I've really enjoyed our conversation today, and I'm so glad you joined me on the podcast. Hopefully we can do it again soon. Well, big thanks to Lily for being on the podcast. And I love talking with people like Lily because she brings such wisdom around how we get our message out to potential clients. And I think being able to connect on a level that is really more personal to people and really being able to identify your niche and who are your ideal clients is something that is always a good starting place. I just see it over and over again in people that I consult with and people that I work with over time. If you're, by the way, and speaking of consulting, I would encourage you to reach out to Lily. And again, there'll be links here in the show notes, in the show summary at therapycorps.com. And then also, if you would be interested in working with me, be happy to talk with you about that. And you can go to practiceoftherapy.com and you can find links there to get in touch with me and we can begin the conversation. I do take on individual consulting clients. And also, if you're in those beginning stages, though, you might be interested in the Practice Launch Club. And again, you've heard me mention that in previous episodes, but enrollment is still open for that. And you can find out more about that by going to practiceoftherapy.com/launch club. And also be sure to check out those free webinars. Those are there for the taking, and you get to pick the time you want to watch and listen and participate in those those free trainings at practiceoftherapy.com/webinars. And then last but not least, a big thanks to TherapyNotes for sponsoring the podcast. They're the folks that keep this coming for you, and hopefully looking forward to a long relationship with them. And they're who I use in my practice. I absolutely love their platform, and they are really one of the top-ranked electronic health record systems for mental health providers. And you can try them out for 2 months by using the promo code just Gordon, Gordon, and find out more about them by going to practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes. Well, take care, folks. Do take time to follow us wherever you might be listening to the podcast, and looking forward to being with you in future episodes. Got lots of great guests lined up for you to hear from. So take care, folks. You have been listening to the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer, part of the PsychCraft network of podcasts. Please visit us at practiceoftherapy.com for more information, resources, and tools to help you in starting, building, and growing your private practice. And if you haven't done so already, please sign up to receive the free private practice startup guide at practiceoftherapy.com. The information in this podcast is intended to be accurate and authoritative concerning the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, or producers are rendering legal, accounting, or clinical advice. If you need a professional, you should find the right person for that.